Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just critically thinking. And, and I think what people are
but we don't do that anymore.
No, I think what people are not able to do is have two things exist at once.
Welcome to the Boom Clap podcast, where culture and conviction collide. I'm your host, Rita Rogers. Today we have on with us Rachel Reeves from Here Are the Headlines. She's been on this podcast a couple times before, so if you've listened for a long time, you already know her and love the way she shares the headlines probably. She does a really good job of sharing the headlines. She also shares her opinion, but you always know when she's doing that, and I appreciate that about her. So we're going to have a good conversation, current events based, and I need somebody to do that with me. Rachel is the perfect person for the job. If you are just starting out this year listening to episodes again, getting back into things since the new year, you're not going to want to miss last week's episode. Go back and listen. We had Jolie Smith on, who is a veteran mother and homeschool mom of 11 children. She's in stages from teens and still having kids at home and homeschooling them to already having kids out of the house and having grandchildren. It's such a good, encouraging episode. I know there's just chaos abundant online, but if you want something that just encourages you within the home, go back and listen. She talks to us about how to raise kids who love Jesus and each other. Sometimes I find the latter part of that is probably the harder portion. So it's a really, really good episode. She also talks to us about how to discern what activities are going to be beneficial for your kids and not overstretching yourself. So just a really, really wholesome conversation. We also, the week before that, had Nick and Leah Wilson on. Leah is the co-founder for Stand for Health Freedom, so you might be familiar with her already. It was a great episode talking about their book, Reclaiming Vitality, which they wrote to help people exit the medical system, which a lot of people really want to do right now. And I personally believe we need the medical system we have for emergencies. They believe that as well. But people talk about exiting the system for the smaller things and just getting their health back on track, but we don't always go deep enough into that so people know what to do. That's a really good conversation for that as well, and for knowing how to get your health back on track. So go back and listen to those episodes. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube now. If you like the video portion of that, you can listen on Apple. Please also leave a review. That helps push this podcast out to new listeners. You can go on Apple and leave a written review, even if you listen on other platforms. I really appreciate that. Also, please support the sponsors for the show. Today we have CASA Organics. You can use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your order at rowcasaorganics.com. And you can also go to Equip Foods and use the code RITA15 to save 15% on any of those products there. The Prime Protein is something I love. All right, let's get into it with Rachel. All right, we're going to talk current events today. Switch from last week, the homeschool conversation and the mothering conversation, to current events. I have Rachel Reeves on with us, and she is always a delight to talk to. Rachel, so happy to have you back for the third time.
Wow, has it been 3 times?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
The first time, though, I think the first time was either late 2022 or early 2023. And we were both like wrapping up our 40-year-old geriatric pregnancies. Yes. And now those babies are about to be 3.
I know. I can't believe it. I think you were 40 and I was 42. Because how old are you now?
I'm 42.
Okay. I'm 45. I turned 45 in September.
Okay. So, I'm about to be 43. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember we were kind of in that together where everybody was looking at us sideways. You know,
why are you old and pregnant?
I know. What's wrong with you? And then you get old and pregnant, and then you realize there's actually a lot of people who are old and pregnant, and it's not as abnormal as it kind of, it's whatever like pond you're swimming in just feels like it's the normal for everybody, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah. So I had posted a couple years ago, actually, just kind of like, you go to the doctor or whoever, your midwife or whatever, and they're kind of like, you're older, we need to do these things, and act like it's an oddity, or that if you get pregnant, there's all these risks. And I'm kind of like, well, God gives us boundaries. He gives us menopause. So why are we setting this other artificial boundary, by way of the medical system?
Yes.
And like you said, I got so many comments from women are like, I had a baby at 41. I had a baby at 43 or, and so it's really less uncommon than you think.
It is. And I remember trying to tell a lot of people still write me and say, we want to have more kids. What do you have to say? And I always tell them, like, just go for it, do it, and what the Lord will allow, what he's going to allow to happen. And I even had a higher risk than when I look at a normal, healthy 41, 42, 43-year-old, I'm like, there are no risk factors. They're just going to make you feel like there are because you're older. It's not that there's not any, but there's just not as many as they make it seem. I had, though, this was going to be my fourth cesarean. And I do, understand that with each cesarean, things can happen. And even still, I was like, well, we'll take it. If it comes to that, we're going to deal with that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for people who have had their babies naturally, or maybe one cesarean or whatever, I just really encourage them, think more about it, look more into it, because it's not just what the popular narrative is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. If God lays it on your heart, don't throw that thought away. So,
yes. Yeah.
All right. So you have been doing a lot. And I was laughing talking to my husband. We were just talking beforehand a little bit. How do you do all the things you do? Because I was there at one time, but now with this toddler boy, I'm not getting as much done as I was. And I was laughing talking to my husband. I was like, I think the first time I had Rachel on, I had like 43,000 followers on Instagram, and she was like maybe 20 or, a little less than that. And now I have 43,000 followers on Instagram and Rachel's got like 100. Well, I just kind of shrunk back for a while and have been focusing on long form, but you've been doing all kinds of things and going to the White House. And so what has that been like for you?
It's been really exciting. And I think the reason I enjoy it so much and I'm so grateful for it is because it wasn't like manufactured. I didn't try to make it happen, which makes it all the more rewarding, in my opinion. There's been times in my life in different seasons where I really tried to make things happen and then they wouldn't budge and you feel so defeated. But then when you kind of just do what God's calling you to do, you do what you love to do, and things just fall into place. And so that's what's been happening. And it's been wonderful. It's been really exciting to get to have some of these opportunities to, head into DC, meet with people, talk with them, get that experience, see what it is like in the swamp, and learn more about the inner workings of government and politics, which I've always really enjoyed learning about and talking about. So it's been great. It has been really fun. And it's like I was telling you before we started, it's a season though. And I've talked with my husband about it too. If we get to a season where I'm just not able to do it anymore, I'm just not going to be able to do it. I hold it pretty lightly. I take it seriously, but I hold it lightly because, as moms sometimes you just hit a wall where some seasons you're going to be able to do a lot. But I tell people, if this was even, when I started doing this about 5 years ago, I would never have been able to do the things I'm doing right now, like having time to write on Substack or make resources or head into the Capitol. I just wouldn't have had the time or the energy really. But it's a new season now and I have the ability to do some things, but who knows where it'll be in 3 or 4 years. I don't know. Yeah. So, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I'm learning as I get older is it's okay to set things down. Things will come back around and you'll have time in different ways. When I was younger, a younger mom, that was harder for me. Yeah. I was like, this is how things are going to be forever. And it's not that I didn't appreciate my young children. I absolutely did. And I really soaked that up. But it was harder to feel like there was going to be a time where I could ever do something else again. And so being able to be an older mom, I can enjoy it in a different way without feeling like this is forever. Yeah. How fleeting it is.
Totally agree. Absolutely. With age comes wisdom.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So tell me about going to the White House. Tell me what it's like having gained access, because I know people have a lot of criticisms of Donald Trump. I do as well, but I do feel like he's accessible. Yeah. When I talk to my United States representative, about something that is concerning me, like there have been times she's actually texted me a day later, a week later, and she's like, I talked to Trump and he said this, and it feels like regardless of our criticisms, he is much more accessible to the average everyday person than presidents in the past.
Yes, he absolutely is. And as an observer of politics in general and how different administrations operate, it is night and day compared to just the last administration. And it's even a little different than his first administration. He is much more open to answering questions from the press and inviting people in and having, roundtables and talking about things. And he's always in front of the camera answering. I mean, whether you like how he's answering or not, whether you like, his MO for engaging with the press, he is in front of the cameras answering questions and talking and informing the American public what's going on. It was not like that with Joe Biden. When the first 3 years I was doing this, I was covering his presidency, and you almost forgot that he was the president. You weren't covering him
because he kind of wasn't.
Yeah, he wasn't, and he also wasn't even pretending to be. He wasn't in front of the cameras. He wasn't having, he wasn't televising his cabinet meetings or doing random pressers on his way to Air Force One. It just wasn't an option. It wasn't available to anybody. And Donald Trump, for all his foibles, is out there in front. Things aren't even things that are like covert operations and like, things that are happening. He's telling people about it on Truth Social. He's talking about it. He's answering questions. And so love it or hate it, it's a stark difference than the past. And so that also, this administration, not just him, but those in the White House, they make the White House, the Capitol building, and information very accessible to press. I mean, they are having press in there all the time and, opening it up to new media, not just the same old outlets that always were there, that have a constructive narrative, that work well with the administration. They're pulling in all kinds of people. And that's wonderful, I think. It's a net good, in my opinion. So yes, totally different than the last administration.
Yeah. And I do think something that's changed recently. So when you speak about politicians in general, I feel like there's this having access, the average person having access. It's a little bit different than the mass media. Well, it's different in many ways. But one thing that's different is the individual doesn't have any connections other than their individual back and forth between these politicians. And so in some ways, I think that there's a little bit of a pull, unless you have a very strong foundation and you will maintain your principles regardless, there's a little bit of a pull to just be like, I'm going to overlook that with this person, or I'm not going to talk about this, because you want to maintain that access. And that bothers me a little bit. But I do think something that's changed with Donald Trump a little bit is he's been a little more open to maintaining relationships with people who have criticized him recently. Yeah, I've noticed that, like with Tucker Carlson, he's been, bringing him back in a little bit, even though Tucker has been openly critical, but at the same time saying, like, I still love Donald Trump. And I find that interesting. Like, the general politicians, maybe not so much, but seems like Trump has a little bit.
Yeah, I think that there's a few people who he always is going to just put at arm's length, the Thomas Masseys, Rand Paul, stuff like that. And they both do it back and forth. Thomas Massey, his posture is just, really to say no to just about everything. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's because he genuinely is opposed to what he's saying no to. That's what I always hope. And if that is it, then he is very consistent. And I think that that's important. But for the most part, Donald Trump will, make amends and let people back in, or not ostracize people completely if they criticize, especially as Republicans. He's really good about that. I mean, there's some in the media, he land blasts CNN, MSNBC, all those media outlets all the time. And, rightfully so, they deserve it. But I don't ever really get too afraid to put things critical about Donald Trump for fear of like not being invited to stuff anymore. And I don't care, even if I wasn't invited, I'm still going to write what I'm going to write and share. But it's not a concern really, because I am critical of some things, and I post them, and they still ask me to. I think they desire honest journalism that's thoughtful.
Yeah.
Or not even just journalism, but political commentary. And I think readers or people who imbibe that content, I think they want it too. I think that they know that there are certain voices, especially on the political right, who never criticize Donald Trump. And I think people pick up on that. And some people love that. Some people want that.
Yeah.
But I think people see through it. And there's a growing contingent of people who are like, I don't feel right about what he did here. And I want to be able to talk about it and say the thing and not be thought of as a traitor. So I think it's very good. And I do think he's open to people who kind of dissent, but do it. I don't know if respectfully is the right word, because I don't know if he's so concerned about that. But like, look at him and Elon even get in a fight. Very public, very juvenile. For the whole world to see. And then, they'll show up at something together and be friendly a couple months later. It's like, I don't know. But he doesn't seem to me to be the type to hold a grudge too often, or cut people off completely if they disagree with a policy.
It's kind of different than, I don't know, what we had experienced in the past. But you brought up Rand and Massey, and that is something I wanted to get to because I don't know. I like Rand Paul. Thomas Massey, I have this weird feeling about him. I don't even know. I know I sound like Candace right now. But I don't know. I agree with a lot of what he says. But at the same time, something feels a little bit theatrical about how he presents himself. And that bothers me a little bit. But I try to just stick to what people say regardless of how
they present it.
They portray themselves.
Yeah.
But Rand, I just don't get it. I mean, I don't know why Trump has to go after him so much. He is one of the most fiscally minded people there is in Congress. So I just don't really, I don't know.
He's very consistent, and I like Rand Paul. He is not theatrical, and I don't feel like he is out for clicks. In fact, on our podcast, Rita and Reeves, we interviewed his wife about a year ago.
Okay.
Not even a year ago. It was like 6 months ago.
Actually, I remember you doing that.
Yeah, and she was really sweet, and it was a little bit of an insight into DC. The DC world of politics is slimy. It just is. And you do have to make concessions and compromise at times, probably when you wouldn't want to, in order to stay in this kind of, I don't want to say an in group, but on the short list of like, I don't know, celebrity politicians. I just don't feel like Rand Paul plays that game.
No.
And I think, it seems to me, and I like Thomas Massey, I like a lot of what he says about, our omnibus bills and how we do the exact same thing every single year with, appropriations bills. He's spot on about it.
Yep.
But Rand Paul has a consistent message and record of voting fiscally conservative, not wanting to interject ourselves into foreign wars. He also is, vocal about how we're just like plummeting ourselves into debt. And even when Marco Rubio was on Capitol Hill, I think it was 2 days ago, and he was being questioned by Rand Paul about, the capture of Maduro in Venezuela. And he was like, if the situation was reversed, would you be thinking that this was okay? Wouldn't you be declaring war if somebody came in and, captured basically President Trump or whatever? And before Marco Rubio gave his reply, he did say, I do respect that your position has always been the same, Rand. You're very, consistent. So it's well known he's like that, and then, it's up to people to decide if they like his policies or not. But he is very consistent. And I appreciate that about him. But that doesn't always fare well in DC when compromise is the name of the game a lot of the time.
Well, I had asked somebody in Congress a few weeks ago about it. I was like, why is Trump all over? What can we do about this? He needs to shut this down. Like, just stop jumping all over these people that people in his base actually like, And this person was just like, oh my gosh, they got very like kind of, not upset, but just like they got riled a little bit. And like,
really,
he's all about legalizing drugs. Like he's not who you think he is. And I'm just like, these feel like planted talking points, and I don't know, it frustrates me a bit because I think the left always does a really good job of coming together and propping each other up.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the aisle, I kind of appreciate why we don't do that because we are more principled in general.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we got to come together a little bit better. And we're going to keep dividing each other and parsing each other out if we go about things this way.
Yeah, for sure. The Democrat Party has continually become more radicalized and more of a monolith, actually. They, there was a talking point for a long time that the radical left is taking over, or there's a few that are really fringe left. And really that radical base has become more of the norm. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Republican side, what I've observed is that a lot of Republicans, they want liberty to be able to think of things differently. And so that can lead to a lot of like backbiting and things like that. And also, again, there are, I think, times when these politicians compromise, but they don't want people to actually know about it. Or, for instance, there's a bill that just was passed in the House, and I don't know if you saw it, about the kill switch in cars starting in 20. And 57 Republicans voted yes on this. Yes. And one of them I really like and had just spoke with recently. And I haven't talked with that person since, but I know it's because they had to compromise and vote yes on this so they could get something else for their constituents over here. And that happens a lot. And I have to believe that happens with people like Rand Paul or Thomas Massie. There's no way you stay in Congress and you aren't having to compromise at some point. But Democrats, by and large, they have a common enemy, and that is the Republican Party. And so they will band together and, accept whoever in their coalition that's going to be able to destroy the Republican Party. Whereas the Republican Party obviously is enemies with the Democrat Party more than I wish that they would be. But they also have a lot of unique people in the coalition. They have now libertarian-minded people. They have, the staunch MAGA Republicans. They have more like social conservatives. And then you have some more like economic conservatives, but are like a little loosey-goosey on social issues. There's just a broad coalition right now. And so that lends itself to more infighting. It just does.
If you're on the hunt for the best non-toxic products to use in your home and on your family, look no further than ROWE CASA Organics. They have products for your household, for body care, sleep, teas, hormone products, wellness products, allergies, skincare, you name it. It's a one-stop shop that is non-toxic and you can trust. You can use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order. ROWE CASA is on a mission to provide clean, non-toxic, high-quality, and completely natural, effective products. They're constantly pursuing the best ingredients found in nature, along with working alongside organic chemists and third-party testers to ensure maximum potency, efficacy, and quality with every ingredient in every product. If you haven't tried ROWE CASA yet, go to ROWECASAorganics.com and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order. So let's talk about conservatism a little bit and what conservatism means. I have thoughts, kind of what it should mean, obviously, but like, what does it mean now to the people currently serving in politics and in government? I don't know. I'll just let you go. You just tell me what you think. And I just want to know if you're kind of thinking anything that I'm thinking.
Well, it's a loaded question. There's a lot of directions you could go with to answer that. I think that people often, they exchange out republicanism and conservatism, and they use them interchangeably, which I don't think is really helpful or accurate. I mean, at the base, the short answer, I mean, conservatism was conserving economically and socially things and foundational principles that are important. And if that's the case, I really don't think that the Republican Party is socially conservative anymore, or as much as I'd like them to be. I'm sure my cultural beliefs and my economic beliefs, but certainly my cultural beliefs would have me labeled as like alt-right for sure with a lot of people. I'm just as conservative about as you could get when it comes to social issues and economic issues too, but for sure with cultural issues. And that's where I part with the current Republican Party. I don't feel like they are as socially conservative as they would like people to believe them they're just better than Democrats on social issues. So they're basically the Democrat Party from like 15, 20 years ago. And with each election that I see, they trend farther away from conservatism when it comes to cultural issues. So yeah, I think that really what we have right now is a strong coalition in a Republican Party, which still tries to be and attempts to be fiscally responsible, more so than the Democrat Party. They want more limited government, federal government intervention in like social programs. And yes, certainly we are trending a little bit backwards when it comes to social issues with the transgenderism issue that presented itself several years ago that really kind of was a defining feature of the election. And some of those kinds of social issues for sure, starting to discuss like problems with surrogacy, and certainly the conservative part, the GOP is more, anti-abortion than the Democrat Party, but that still doesn't mean we're conservative when it comes to the abortion issue. But we are definitely, certainly more conservative than Democrats, but I don't see the current makeup of the Republican Party as super conservative. I see it as more conservative than Democrats, if that makes sense. That might have been a word salad, but
no, it wasn't. It makes sense. And it's interesting. I pulled a couple of things out that I agree with everything you said, but feel a little opposite on what we're going more conservative on. So I had my friend Echo Unafraid. I think you're familiar with. Yeah. Like the end of last year. I can't remember. It was right after something. Maybe, we were talking about Charlie Kirk. It was shortly after that. And my friend Heather was on as well. And one of them said something, I think Heather said something about, being conservative, and you're conservative. And I was like, I have a hard time wearing that word anymore because they don't really know what it means to anyone. And I have a hard time wearing any kind of label anymore because we've twisted what everything means. And so it doesn't even mean what I think it means. And like you, I would say I'm probably more conservative than 95% or maybe 99% of our government officials. But I was talking to someone recently and it just hit me that conservatism now means to me like anti-woke. That's kind of what conservatism means to me. And so, well, I totally agree with you that we are basically the old Democrat Party and we are not socially conservative enough for my values. I still think in the last 2 to 3 years, we are rolling that back a little bit. And I feel like it's more so limited government and fiscal conservatism where we're lacking. I feel like the Republican Party that would label themselves conservatives doesn't really care about limited government anymore. They kind of scoff at that. And we just do the same or believe the same things and believe government is the solution. Not we, as in me. I don't. And that's what frustrates me. But that most of the people in Congress look at government as a solution to problems, just an opposite solution than what the Democrats feel. And that really bothers me that, I don't know, this is a really silly example probably in the scheme of things, but the Trump accounts, the $1,000 for every baby. I'm like, that's socialism. Like, why? I understand we want to increase birth rates or, whatever. But that's not government's job. And people got mad about Biden wanting to relieve people's government loan, or not government loans, student loans, but they're not upset at Trump for rewarding people for having children. I'm like, that's not our job.
Right. Because really what it is it's using big government for the things that we care about. And so it would be really hard for someone to go in and be honest about if they were a fiscal conservative and they got into the White House and they said, we have to do away with all of these big government programs. We're going to get rid of Social Security. We're going to get rid of SNAP. We're going to get rid of the government's outsized role in schools nationwide. We're going to get rid of, like you said, the Trump accounts or whatever, because it's really just what Democrats do when they're in office. It just is labeled differently. Yeah. And we do it. And I do like some of the strides that, say, like Secretary Kennedy's making with putting restrictions and guardrails on Medicaid or on
well, that needs to happen. That is limiting. That is essentially divorcing some of our tax dollars from things. Yeah.
Right. But there's so many of those programs. And thanks to, I always have it goes back for me to FDR. Once the Great Depression hit and there was all of these federal agencies put in place to care for Americans, it becomes very next to impossible, if not impossible, to scale that back and be like, okay, we're going to start over, and we're going to start over the way we were supposed to, which was limited government. You depend on your community, your church, your local government, your state government. Federal government is not here to take care of everything and everybody. But it's impossible to get in the White House and be like, okay, we're just going to stop all of this. They would need acts of Congress, legislation would have to be changed. It would fundamentally shift what America looked like. And I don't think there's an appetite for that. So I think you're right that a lot of Republicans probably, if they had to sit down and really think about it, wouldn't necessarily label themselves as conservative when it comes to fiscal and economic policy. It would be, they're just more conservative. I'm not trashing my party. This is my party affiliation. I am a conservative. I know I am. If I was ruling the world, I would rule conservatively. But there's a lot of things that, just like there's a lot of the Democrat Party, they want to call themselves liberal. I'm like, you're not liberal. You're progressives. You're radicals. And we have to be able to say that on our side, there's a lot of Republican Party affiliated politicians who don't necessarily govern or legislate conservatively. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Like I was just looking over, I have F.A. Hayek's Road to Serfdom over there. And he talks
my friend about, Mercedes reading that right now. She loves
it. Good. It is so good. Yep. And it's not really a hard read as far as the linguistics of it. It's just, sitting there and thinking through the economics and everything he's talking about. But he does a great job talking at the beginning about liberalism and the fact that we've totally hijacked that word and it doesn't mean what we think it means, but this book was written, I think, in the 1920s or maybe 1910s. So
yeah. Mercedes loves it. She's like, it's a must read. So I'm going to get on that.
It is for sure. Put it on the long list, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking, I think Elon had tweeted out sometime during that tiff with him and Trump about he had put a poll up on Twitter, should we create a new party?
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like, I think that's kind of what we already did, I think that's kind of what MAGA did, was create a new party, because it's not exactly conservative. Trump isn't really a conservative.
Not at all. He's a centrist for sure.
Yeah, but people don't, I feel like the general base doesn't really see that. They think they voted for a conservative. So
right, they do, because a lot of times he says the right things. But I think that means that voters who vote for Trump, believing him to be an honest conservative, probably don't themselves understand how far to the left they've moved in their politics in the last couple decades, and so they align with them, and they're like, sure. And I hear a lot of, especially with like the abortion discussion or gay marriage, it's like, well, it's better than what they are going to allow. And I'm like, that's what's going to get you to basically a Democrat talking point in 10 years. You are going to be even more pro-abortion in 10 years if you keep using that as your excuse. If that's your litmus test, that you're just better than the other guys, it's not principled, first of all, but it's just going to land you in the same place that they are right now, just 10 years later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm sitting here, people probably listening are like, oh my gosh, she doesn't like Trump. I'm a 3-time general election Trump voter. Like, I will admit that. And I'm not ashamed of it even now. Yeah. And I don't know how we get people there, though, to realize, yes, we vote for people that maybe aren't perfect. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, you know, a year later, people are like, oh, I can't. I get DMs like, I'm so ashamed that I voted for Trump. I'm like, well, there's a lot of things like Palantir, like all of this stuff going on that I don't want. I don't like. I don't like AI. I don't like the fact that we're not letting states put laws up for AI. I don't like that there are no laws around AI, or that there's not consent to use your picture for AI. Like, that stuff should be put in place. Yes. But still, I do not for one single moment regret my vote. Like, there's nuance to all these conversations, and there's decisions that have to be made that are imperfect decisions. And I don't know how we get people there.
Well, I think by giving them a permission structure to not constantly oscillate between, like, I'm super proud of what I did. Oh my gosh, that person wasn't perfect and made a mistake. And now I regret my whole life choices like surrounding this. And that's just, that everybody's going to arrive at that differently. I arrived at it later because I didn't vote for Trump the first 2 times. I wrote someone in, and then I voted for him in 2024. Because I came to realize I was just going to think about it differently. I wasn't going to live in like a posture of, I could regret this one day. I wanted to be able to say, this is a much better solution than the alternative. And that's where I'm going to leave it. And that's what I'm doing here, where I thought about it differently the first 2 times. I don't regret those decisions either. I was different then. I had different thoughts and about the whole situation. I had different information. But we just need to be able to allow people, like, calm down. You don't need to feel and voice your regret for every choice you made based on the information you had at that time, because you couldn't know what was going to happen necessarily. So yeah, that's what I would say. But I hear that a lot. People will write me, I regret this, I regret that. And to me, that's not super helpful. We need to be looking forward, using the information we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to nutrition, there's a lot of talk about meeting your protein needs. And while I leverage whole foods as much as possible, finding Equip Foods, and specifically their Prime Protein Powder, has been a huge help for my busy lifestyle. And when I say find, I searched and searched specifically for a single ingredient, all beef protein powder. And now you can go to equipfoods.com/Rita15 and use the code Rita15 to save when you try it for yourself. Why beef protein? It is a clean, highly bioavailable source of complete protein containing all 9 essential amino acids, and it has naturally occurring collagen and gelatin for the skin. It doesn't require the heavy processing like whey and plant powders. No chemicals are used in the process, and it won't leave you with a protein powder bloat that you might be familiar with. Prime Protein is the original beef protein powder with over 20 grams of delicious grass-fed beef protein, no junk, no fillers, and is third-party tested for safety. So go to equipfoods.com/Rita15 or click the link in the show notes of this episode and use the code Rita15 to save on your Prime Protein order or any of the Equip Foods products. All right, I don't know what you want to talk about next. I have a whole list. We got
whatever you want.
We could go AI. We could go Trump crypto or the border. Where do you want to go?
Whatever you want, honestly.
I don't know. Let's talk border, because everybody's going to want to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. What do you... Oh my gosh. It's such a mess. It is such a mess. And I just feel like I support... So I didn't talk about it a lot on my social platform, and I haven't, just because I don't feel like anybody really wants to listen.
And it's such about the border issue, or about
ICE specifically, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think anybody really is in it to listen. They just want to spout their opinion or be angry with either side, really. And I just find it very frustrating because I personally can't. I wouldn't say I stand with ICE or I support ICE and blanket that statement, though I do support what their role is and what they're doing.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Like, I support the deportations we voted for and deporting people who are here illegally.
Yeah.
But some of these situations, I do think maybe could have been handled a little differently, though I'm not there. I'm not going to put something on someone.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just critically thinking. And I think what people are
but
not...
we don't do that anymore.
No, I think what people are not able to do is have two things exist at once.
Yep.
They are unable to say, I support broadly and generally what ICE is commissioned to do through the laws in our federal government. I agree that it's needed. I agree that the enforcement of the border and immigration laws is essential to a well-running civilization. And I agree with what they are doing, broadly speaking. And also, they are a government entity and a group of humans that are going to make mistakes. And we should be able to apply that to the family structure. We agree broadly that families are amazing and that they are for the benefit of civilization and our country. And also, there's going to be mistakes made in how we go about kind of forming and understanding that. Same as an administration. The difference is, and you're right, it's on both sides. But certainly on the left, what I have viewed is there is no nuance. It is anti-ICE, anti all of them. Whereas I feel like Republicans are more so being able to say...
It's a mix.
Of course, it is. I agree with law enforcement. We need law enforcement. I support law enforcement and ICE. And also, they're going to make mistakes. And we need to be able to say that without people going on our own side, being able to... We don't need them to say to us, oh, so you're not a patriot or you're not being loyal to the... No, that's not it at all. And the more people come out and say, I stand with law enforcement. We need law enforcement. You don't want a country without law enforcement. And also, we can still talk about the nuance with this specific situation. That is important. And, I just don't see that. That's not on the left. It is all or nothing. Abolish ICE, get rid of them. And I hope that we don't descend quite into that level of, I don't even know the word. We're able to hold two things at one time, but we'll see. This conversation's been fraught. It definitely has.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was listening to a clip, Greg Gutfeld. I can't remember the girl's name that's on the show with him. And he just kind of went after her.
Jessica Tarlov,
yes.
I think. Yeah.
Did you see that clip?
I didn't, but he has had several of those in the last couple of months where he's just like, I can't even with you anymore. I cannot.
Went off. And the part that got me is he was like, which my husband and I talked about this too, people have been so upset about these deaths, but they haven't been upset about, the deaths of the women who have been murdered at the hands of illegal immigrants. And I get that. That's, kind of the talking point.
Yes.
But what he went on to say is you use these, in the media, you use Alex Preddy's death, you use these. And it's almost like this one's kind of run its course. We need another one. Yeah. And I feel that. I feel, not me personally, but I feel that happening on social media where they feast on these things,
Yes.
And they almost celebrate it, and it's strange.
Yeah. And they are being used as those people, like as I think about Renee Good and Alex Preddy, I'm not saying that those activists that are out there in the street or progressives writ large want violence to happen against people that are in their movement, but they certainly were out there enticing law enforcement and provoking them because they want something to happen, because that will fit their narrative and move it forward. And their narrative being that ICE is dangerous and violent and bad things are going to happen as a result of them being out here. So in that respect, they do want something to happen. And those two are almost used as like a martyr for the progressive movement against law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that there is celebration that happened because it proves their point, in a sense, in the same way that there was a celebration in the same twisted way of the celebration of Charlie Kirk's death on the left, which the left still says didn't happen, but all of us watched it happen.
It obviously did.
It was so sad. And so, I do, and it's not just the death of people or violence. It's just a narrative that authoritarianism is on the rise and Donald Trump is a fascist, because Alex Preddy is going to fall out of the news cycle. I actually think it'll be pretty quick. They're having this huge walkout today, national walkout against ICE. But ICE is going to draw down in Minneapolis. So unless they go into another state and the state does plays the same game where, they say they're not going to comply and help, I think they'll move on to a new narrative. And I think that they're going to move on to a narrative actually about elections that have to do with, say, Fulton County, Georgia or something. They're going to move on. What they do, though, is they move from narrative to narrative to narrative, acting as if it is the biggest narrative of all time and the most dangerous. And they all have their talking points, and that's just how they function. They go from one catastrophe to the next, convincing their base that violence and danger in one way or another is happening. And I don't like saying that they wanted this to happen, but it serves their purpose and they were there inciting it. So
well, kind of like we said earlier, two things can be true.
Yes.
They may not have wanted this to happen, but certainly after it does, they're like, see, I told you so.
That's right.
And it's kind of grotesque.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah. I don't know. But okay, so another interesting thing when you think about comparisons, the government officials have been, I don't like to say that people have incited things, because if you go online and tweet something, people are free thinking. And you can't say somebody else made me do this because they're in the government and they're bigger than me. And I was told to do this, because somebody tweeted something out. I really struggle with that concept, but that's what people did on January 6th with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now you have actual government officials in signal chats with people protesting.
Yep.
And that's not being said. That's not, they're not saying these government officials incited violence.
Of course not. And it's on, it's not just like behind the scenes anymore. We've gotten used to wholesale government officials, Jacob Frey, Tim Walz, the AG or the DA, in Pennsylvania, Gavin Newsom. You've got the media, mainstream, like legacy media, all parroting a narrative for years that Donald Trump, the people he voted for, the people in his administration are fascists. They're authoritarians. They want to unalive people. They're kidnapping people. They're Nazis. ICE is just like the Gestapo, law enforcement. This is like, what was the term I heard yesterday? It's like rounding up slaves. I mean, would you talk like this? And I have documented it online for years. And you tell people that Donald Trump and his band of like the Gestapo is walking into neighborhoods and just randomly kidnapping people, and you never see them again. And we don't know where they went. When you tell people that for like substantial amount of time, what do you expect them to do? And it seems like such a basic concept, but I know plenty of progressives who are like, that's not happening. But they parrot it. They say he's a fascist. He's an authoritarian. He is, no kings. Yeah. We don't want a king here. And we don't want ICE because they act like the SS. It's alarming how that kind of mind virus has taken over people. So you are, again, given a permission structure to do certain things. You feel emboldened, like Don Lemon and those ICE, who was arrested, by the way, last night. You give people a permission structure to bust into a church during a worship service and think there's going to be no consequences. You think you can go out in the street and obstruct law enforcement and drive your car into them or stop their vehicle or, curse in their face, put your hands on them, and nothing bad's going to happen to you because you haven't had to actually think through it. You've just been told these guys are dangerous. They're here to ruin our country. They're tearing down democracy. And so what are you going to do in that? Are you going to step up and be a good American like the people during the Civil War, like the people during the American Revolution? This is our revolution. And I think people are hungry for that. They want to be involved in something that matters. It means something to them. It's just so misguided because people with the loudest microphones they're kind of cosplaying as revolutionaries, and they're inciting. In some situations, I think they are inciting violence, especially that DA from Pennsylvania yesterday. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. I was like, excuse me? So it's a dangerous place to be in because half of the country, because of these narratives that are promulgated all the time, they think that they are actually dealing with a Hitler 2.0, certainly a police state. And when you really believe something like that and you live in fear of that every single day, it's extremely easy to see how large groups of people can be swept up into engaging in violence, thinking it's justified, thinking it's necessary to save our country. And I think we're like barreling towards that, actually.
Yeah. Well, definitions that have been hijacked, I guess the First Amendment and what it means to be able to protest and have freedom of speech, that's been hijacked somewhat. Like these people don't really know what is actually allowable in the form of a protest or a picket. Right. And they've been propagandized. And so I don't really know what the solution is for that other than people being better thinkers and critical thinkers and raising people up who can think critically, because that's never going to stop. And it does really happen on both sides. I will agree with you that it's particularly, it's a lot happening on the left. It's very in your face. And so I mean, the only solution, you can't stop it. You can't stop this from happening really without somehow trampling on the First Amendment, because what do we do? Say everything's hate speech? We can't really do that. And so we've got to have better thinkers. And so that's kind of like my point on this podcast in general is helping people build a foundation and be better critical thinkers so that we can go out and be against this. Because really, so many people just fall on a side and don't think anymore. And that really bothers me. And it's going to get even worse with AI. Yeah. So not to stay on the Alex Preddy situation, but so his picture was used by the media and enhanced with AI to make you feel differently about him, which is disgusting. I mean, what does that say about us as humans if we need somebody to look a certain way to feel badly about their death? It's really, really disturbing. Yeah. But also, Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, got on the Senate floor and used an AI photo. And the man, one of the ICE agents, didn't even have a head.
Yeah. And my first thought with that is, oh my gosh, what? But also, how did nobody in your staff catch that? Like somebody had to take that to Kinko's and have it made for you. And it was all over the news cycle that this was an AI image. How is nobody in your staff or you yourself, who are going to talk about it, checking in on the news to know what is going on? Because it's now AI is so ubiquitous with everything. In fact, I get nervous posting stuff now, which makes it difficult to be like sharing breaking news because I'm always like waiting to see if what I'm going to share is accurate. And by that time, the news cycle's like past. And this is just what we're living in now, is AI is taken over and is taking over. Or I don't even mean to say taking over, but is such an outsized part of every facet of life.
But like on the flip side though, Rachel, so the other video of Alex Preddy, I think Jorge Ventura had posted it where he's like kicking out the taillight and everything. And he had confirmed that his family, that Alex's family said that was him.
Yeah.
And people still, you can go through the comment sections. This is AI. This is AI. This is AI.
They said it online. Yeah, for sure.
On both sides, like you can create pictures to make people, you can create fake pictures, AI generated pictures to make people think something happened that didn't. And you can in turn on the other side, call things fake and AI that actually are real.
Yeah.
And so when I just hate AI. I hate it. I refuse to use it. I know it will make my life easier. People are like, you can just use it to plug in your thoughts and it makes your thoughts sound better. I don't care. I don't want that. I will always be real. I do not want AI. I just hate it. And the thing is, like, it is making us worse. And people will talk about AI like, oh, it's going to go Terminator on us and it's going to think for us and it's going to do all these things. It's going to start to take over people. We don't even need it to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we need to be afraid of that because it's doing is replacing our brains. It's just making us dependent on it, much like the internet did. The internet was the AI of 2000 in the sense that all of a sudden we had something we could outsource everything to. And I say that as a person who uses internet every day. A lot of the time, there are things where I'll have to stop and go, I don't know how to do that. Like my in my car, which I hate that all the cars have all this smart stuff now.
We still have a couple old vehicles we're hanging on to.
I know. My husband and my daughter both have, like, my husband has an old truck and my daughter has a Subaru, but it's older. So it doesn't have all the bells and whistles.
The bad thing is like all the salt on the roads here. Like you just can't keep your vehicles around as long as you can in California or something.
It's true. But my new car, which I love it so much, but it has all the fancy pants stuff. And the other day it wasn't working for a minute and I needed navigation. And I just thought, like, I had to retrain my brain, and it didn't even work, how to like find my way around, because I have just become so used to, I mean, when we were in high school, we were using Thomas guides, and then MapQuest happened and everything changed. I remember that. But I was able to bust out a Thomas guide and sit there and find my way around with a map, like an actual map. I think if you gave that to me now, it's sad to say I would be confused and it would take me too long. And so I was so mad in the car. I'm like, well, how am I going to get to that place? And I just thought, well, the same way that people got to that place for all of time, and in
North,
the
south,
same
east, west.
Yeah. And in the same way, we have done that in so many different ways. And I don't want to think about how many ways I've outsourced my brain to the internet and to programs that, quote, make your life easier. I'm trying to step back and do things more analog, more long form, but you have to train your brain to do that. I have to train my brain to sit and write and contemplate and go back and edit and write more. I have to train my brain to sit and read more than 20 pages at a time. And that is saying something. And it's only going to get worse the more we outsource to these programs that, quote unquote, make our life easier, better.
Yeah. I actually took predictive text off my phone last year.
What is that? Is that where, like, on your email, it'll finish your sentence?
You're typing a text and it just like starts to finish a word or suggests words for you that you might want to type next.
Oh, I didn't even know you could remove that.
Yeah. Well, I turned it off because I'm like, I don't want it to be I just don't want any of this stuff. I mean, I like technology and how it connects us. I love being able to talk to you. Yeah. I like how it connected me with Cecily that I used to do the podcast with. I love that. Yeah. But we overuse it. We use it for the wrong things. I don't know if you know, the AI just did its first surgery.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we've got AI coming in surgery. And from an ICU nurse perspective, just like what I experienced in the hospital from the time I started to, like, February will be 20 years since I started my ICU career. So that's a long time. And I haven't worked for the last 5 years. We know about that story. But anyway, I think about the hospital and how I watched over the years, nurses originally, when I started working, we would go in with their stethoscopes. We were very attentive to the patients and the things we saw, our observations. And then as time went on, I saw less nurses carrying stethoscopes. They just relied on the labs or the chest x-ray from the morning.
Wow.
nurse practitioners I worked with that, were older and had worked for a really long time. They said, back in the day, we didn't need labs to diagnose half the stuff. We just knew from our experience. And so I think about that and how doctors and nurses just aren't as knowledgeable now because they rely so much on these tests and things. Well, what happens when AI comes in and something goes wrong and a doctor hasn't actually performed this surgery for like 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, it's true.
It's going to be scary.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be scary. And it already is. We have AI embedded now in our military. We have it embedded in our schools across nationwide. And we have to question what is going to disappear because of that. And are we going to be, did I talk with you about it? No, it was another podcast. It was an incredible podcast episode based on, I don't remember which came first, the article or the podcast. It must have been the podcast. I think it was done by The Atlantic, and it was a writer who went in to interview college students and professors about the use of AI and if they use AI, for what function, how often, what about the professors? Are they using AI? Why or why not? It was mind-boggling, just absolutely crazy. The amount of professors that were like, yeah, it writes my curriculum for me. This is what I encourage my students to use it. There were students who were like, I haven't read a book in, I don't know how long. The AI writes a paper for me. This is how you trick it so that, and this guy is not anti-AI. And he was extremely, I think, disheartened by what the results were. And of course, there was the stalwart professor who was like, nope, I'm not using AI. And my kids in the class are going to have to take pen and paper tests now to make sure that they're not using AI to generate their answers. I relate to that person. Yeah, for sure. And I think we're going to see that more and more where students, there was famously last spring when everybody was graduating from high school, there was that student that was caught on video at the UCLA graduation, like holding up a computer with like his term paper or whatever, basically saying, I didn't even write this and I graduated from UCLA. I used AI for like my whole senior year or whatever. But what do we expect? I don't know why anybody would be surprised by that. And we have to question, like, it's Pandora's box has been opened. We can't put it back in. But the way government's using it as well is very alarming. No guardrails have been placed on it, and yet it is actively being used in the military. It's being used in other places. Every day I see something like, oh, now Amazon is going to start working with ChatGPT. This company is going to acquire this AI model. It's everywhere. And it's woven into our lives. Even people who I don't think want to use it or very leery of using it, it'll come for you one way or another. You're going to have to continually reject it over and over and over again. And I don't know what it's going to look like for our kids, I don't know.
I had written an article probably, it was about this time last year. It was whenever Mark Zuckerberg came out on his like little fake apology tour.
Right.
I was like, does everybody not realize like he sees the writing on the wall and he needs to buddy up with Trump about AI? Yeah. But I had said, to me, it seems like the Manhattan Project. Like nobody wants this, or some people want this, but like, it's just everybody knows there's problems and it's going to be bad ultimately. It might do some good things along the way, but we kind of have to do it somehow because other countries are going to have it. And it's another one of those things. It's not clean as far as how you can feel about it, because as much as you don't like it, it's coming, it's not changing. And it's just, But I don't want to just roll with the punches. I don't want to just say, okay, I'm going to do it to keep up with the Joneses, because we don't need more information faster. No. We don't. No. Our brains can't process it.
We have too much as it is. Yeah. Honestly.
So I'm just not going to, I don't know.
I know. Okay. Everybody's likening it to like the space race, but I'm like, making it to the moon was a remarkable feat of like human inspiration. This is like,
did we make it to the moon?
Well, okay, we're not going to argue about that. But yeah, I see it so differently. I see it as just replacing human creativity. It's going to make art gross. It's going to make film, television gross.
Which it already is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you saw that Disney signed, whatever you think of Disney signed a huge multi-year agreement with an AI company to generate stuff based on like past projects, but also create new projects with current characters. It's just, and then I'm watching like 101 Dalmatians with my daughter and going, look at how amazing this artwork was. It's so beautiful and creative, and AI can't think that up. It just can't. It doesn't have a brain that God hardwired to think in color like that. And I don't know. It's going to impact all these different sectors. And
I guess that's my biggest concern is when people talk about AI taking us over, it can't in the sense that God did not create it. Like we are created in God's image. And so that's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is ourselves, just how we respond to it and us essentially eliminating ourselves and eliminating our own gifts by way of turning them over.
That's right. And our ability to think.
Yeah.
If we never have to think about anything, you don't have to get creative with a recipe because you got recipes on AI, and you don't have to think about what you're publishing because it can create a nice poem or story for you. And you don't have to think about, what would this image look like maybe for a movie I want to produce? Well, then all of a sudden that human touch is important. It's God breathed, like it's necessary. And if we outsource everything, we are going to be living in a machine, and that's a cold place to be.
It is. All right. Well, I have about 5 other things I want to talk to you about, but we better wrap up there. So anyway.
I know. I could go on for hours and hours.
Yeah. Well, I think we both could. And that's why we podcast and have long form content that doesn't have to fit into a soundbite on social media.
That's right.
Packaged up for everybody. Okay. So tell everybody where they can find you outside of the podcast.
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Here Are the Headlines, where I daily basically give you political and cultural commentary about what I'm seeing happen in the news. And when you head there, you can find a link to my Substack. And there I write and offer you all kinds of content daily. And you can also find at heretheheadlines.com links to all of this. You can find links to my website where I offer resources for students, like educational resources, my Substack, my Instagram, ways to reach out. There's all kinds of stuff there. So if you're on Instagram, Here Are the Headlines. And if you're not, heretheheadlines.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. You can find me outside the podcast at RitaRogersCo.com, Rita Rogers Co on Instagram, or Boom Clap Podcast on Instagram. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.